Welcome to 247 Real Talk. I'm your host, Julian Perry, once again here with you after missing a week last week because many of my listeners asked me to repeat an episode about my experience with my son who has challenges with autism. But we're back to it this week, and we're going to talk a bit about politics and things that you should be paying attention to. So sit back, relax, and I'll be right back. So welcome back to the 247 Real Talk podcast. Again, I'm Julian Perry, your host, and it's a pleasure to be here with you for another week. Before I get into my topic for this, hopefully, again, I always say short episode, I want to rant for a few minutes, if you will permit me. I'm in New York. I'm in Nassau County, New York. I take the railroad to work. To be more specific, I'm going to call it out. I take the Babylon line. Babylon line is a heavily used line. Been doing so for a few years. Even with the reductions that the MTA has offered, my monthly ticket is close to $300. A few months ago, with the recommendations of a private company apparently, the MTA made drastic changes to the schedules. But not just changes. This was a political thing where everyone could tell. They finally finished the Grand Central Terminal on the east side, which is, I forgot how many years overdue, and $2 billion, I'll say that again, $2 billion over budget. And I remember a news crew commenting that when they in the first week of trains into Grand Central, they went down to this, I believe it's like 14 stories below ground. And when the train pulled in, there were only 6 passengers on the train. Now, you have to understand Manhattan. There are people that go to every part of Manhattan, but there are certain parts of New York City, period, the 5 boroughs, that have heavy travel, right? Heavy commute for work. Penn Station is one. That's the west side of New York City, where the majority of businesses and corporations, et cetera, have their offices. In recent years, Brooklyn, New York, and the Atlantic Terminal, which was completely revamped and redone to support the economic growth in Brooklyn, has spawned movement or expansion by many companies to Brooklyn. There are massive buildings going up. Matter of fact, I call it a Little Manhattan now. If you look at downtown Brooklyn near Flatbush Avenue, it looks like Little Manhattan. And the commuters are in, I don't know the exact number, and I wouldn't trust MTA numbers, but I would say millions of commuters go there daily as well. And so much so that I used to work in Manhattan for 21 years in Midtown Manhattan, and even my office moved to Brooklyn. And in this new recommendation, for many of the rush hour trains, what the changes the MTA made was they made Grand Central a direct ride in and Penn Station, and they made a lot of the trains that go to Atlantic Terminal stop at Jamaica Station, meaning you have to get off the train, walk across to these 2 new tracks that they built that are all the way at the other end, and then jump on another train. Now, that may sound like no big deal, but understand what I'm saying to you. However they decide to implement it for whatever reason, I take a 5-something a.m. train in the morning. There are a lot of people of all different ages on that train because people go to work at different times. When I get off, my train usually comes in around track number 1 or 2 in Jamaica. The track that goes to Atlantic Terminal is track 12. At 5-something in the morning, when you should probably be able to take your train like I did for 20-something years to your destination, whether it be Penn Station or Atlantic Terminal, you can't rest. You can't really sleep because you have to jump off the train and walk from track 1 to track 12. Go upstairs, walk across to 12, to the 12th track, walk down, take another train, 3 stops to Atlantic Terminal. The first thing I noticed when this was implemented was there was an uproar. And the MTA made a lot of excuses saying they were making adjustments or whatever, but nothing really changed for many people. And I think what the MTA decided to use as a strategy is we know everyone is screaming and complaining, but people are people, right? People are busy trying to get to work, to make a living, trying to survive. If we hang in there long enough, the noise will die down, which it has. One of the things I noticed also was elderly people at five something in the morning, trudging, climbing upstairs because I think there's an elevator all the way at the back of the train. Which many when you get to Atlantic Terminal, if you're coming out of Atlantic Terminal to Flatbush Avenue, there's no exit at the back of the train. So most people have to be at the front of the train. You sit where it's most convenient for when you get off. So I watched these old people at five something in the morning struggling up the stairs and then walking across the track 12 and going down. MTA didn't think anything about it. There's no escalators, like multiple escalators where people have options where since everybody has to get off a train load of people that you give them options at each stairway or something to old people to go up. So that's a problem. But the other problem I noticed was that what is happening is that the trains going home, going east in the evenings, they made all these changes and they're calling it express trains, but they're really weird. Trains end at stops that used to be a middle stop along the journey. Trains skip all the stops. But what has resulted is heavy used lines like Babylon, Huntington, well, not so many Huntington, I said Hampstead and other lines. All the trains are packed. So in my evening commute, understand that they also changed the times. So I get off of work and I walk to the railroad. I get off of work at just after 3. My next train I can catch is 4 o'clock. I get on this 4 o'clock shuttle at Flatbush Avenue that takes me to Jamaica. Now they made it clear that while there are connections, the connections will not wait. You will have to, if you miss the connection, you have to wait on another train, which is not necessarily, right away or even within what you would consider a convenient time without the platform getting crowded again. So many people get off the train at Jamaica for that shuttle from Flatbush Avenue, and loads of people are sprinting up the stairs, running across the platforms, running down to other trains that pulled in that they need to get. And in many days, I've seen by the time they sprint over there, get down to the other platform, out of breath, across the train station, the train has gone. It pulls out. It doesn't wait. So I'm saying all these things because what was a commute home where I would get on the train at Atlantic Avenue, and even when I used to work in Penn Station, get the train at Penn Station, choose your line, sit down, and go and relax, read a newspaper, listen to some music, close your eyes for a moment until you got to your stop. Now the entire commute is hectic. Now, you're also wondering, well, why is he complaining about this now? Well, today, and let me say this before I say this. So what I've noticed is as the year rolls on, as we get closer to summer, for some reason, the train I take has gotten more and more. All the trains going to Babylon seem to get more and more packed to the point that on the signs that show the train destination, the stops, and the time, there's now a graph that shows seating availability in the incoming train. There's red for no seating, fully packed. There's dark yellow for heavy, but light yellow for more chance of a seat. And then there's white and green. I'm assuming green is good to go, and I'm not sure what white is. The point is, it doesn't matter because when my train pulls in, I look up, it's all red most of the time, or all dark yellow. Recently, it's been all red. So when your train pulls in now, you've got this agitation because you now have to get on the train, and people are pushing and shoving, and it's a mess. Most of the time, if you don't push and shove, you will stand for your entire ride home. You will not get a seat, or at least out to I think Freeport, the first stop, which is quite a ride standing up before people start to get off. Today, I went through the same routine, and this man got on the train with all the pushing and shoving and everything, and he dropped right there with a heart attack. Police came, ambulance, fire. They emptied the train. So now let's look at two things. I don't want to minimize what I just said, but they emptied the train and canceled the train. So just to let you know that the next train to Babylon we took, I think anyone else, it was almost to the point people had to go on the roof of the train. That's how packed it was. There was all the seats were filled, and I have to tell you, since COVID, people have been sitting and leaving a space in between themselves and the other person. I guess we just still have the paranoia of COVID. There was no space anywhere. There was no conductor couldn't collect tickets because you couldn't walk down the aisles. They took the other train out of service. Police ran in. They started CPR. Ambulance. Everyone came. They emptied the train. They locked down the doors. There was probably about a dozen or more cops there guarding the car. But my point is, gentleman may have had a problem. Obviously, he probably had a issue with his heart already. But I can't rule out the fact that the stress of this commute every day and what we saw today with this crushed train didn't add to him suffering a heart attack at that time. I pray that they managed to save him. At the point where I saw them, it wasn't looking good. But I hope they managed to save him. And I don't know what the chances are that someone who knows him or someone in his family ever hears this podcast, this episode. But if you do, I hope you sue the heck out of the MTA. Because what they've done to passengers and people who pay a lot of hard-earned money is make sure that trains are efficient according to how they see them run, not taking the people and the passengers into consideration, but taking their cost savings, their best way to say, oh, we cover every stop, and to make sure that their bosses at the top get to put a little bonus and raise into their pockets while telling the federal government that they're going to have to raise fares again if they don't get more money. It is ridiculous. And this is something that we need to add to our list of those of you in New York. It's time for a change. Having said that, I'm going to move on to my topic, and I've probably only going to spend about 10 minutes on it, and I'm going to call this an episode. But the actual topic for this episode has to do with the Republican Party and their candidates for the 2024 election. I have a lot more to say in upcoming episodes because it's getting interesting as more and more people jump into the race. This week, I heard now that Governor Christie from New Jersey will be announcing his candidacy next week. So there are a lot of big names in there that are challenging the presumptive nominee, or who was President Trump, who I think, honestly, Republican, Democrat, whoever you are, those of Republicans, and I don't judge people by their affiliation, but you should be ashamed to call him your presumptive candidate if that's the case. But what I want to focus on is Governor DeSantis, because he is possibly has the potential of winning that nomination, given the fact that I honestly think that even Republicans are becoming weary and tired of the nonsense around President Trump. And I think that they're looking for a probably younger, more sustainable version of him, someone who is probably more level-headed and has less baggage. But what do we term as level-headed? And I just want to introduce Governor DeSantis to my listeners with a few tidbits about his track record of what he has done and his laws in Florida since he became governor. And I think this is important. Democrat, Republican, whomever, however you vote, to understand the candidates. And as we go forward with debates and speeches, be able to not only fact check, but be able to take time to make a decision as to how this country goes forward. So I'm looking at a list of things that he did. One of the things he enacted was an elections package. He signed what they said was 20 bills ahead of his announcement as candidate, and part of it was an sweeping elections package that had an amendment that paved the way for him to run for president while remaining governor. So in other words, he signed a bill that made it convenient for him to stay in his current job while pursuing the job for president. I guess he's making sure he has a fail-safe, huh? But here's some other things that people should be more concerned about: Democrat, Republican, Libertarian, Independent, whomever you are. He signed, and what he did in Florida, you have to think about what the impact would be to the entire nation. Florida is one state, but think about the nation. He signed a 6-week abortion ban, and he called it the Heartbeat Protection Act, with exclusions or exceptions for rape, incest, and human trafficking. But the 6-week abortion ban, I think every woman out there who really uh, respects and holds on tight to their right to choose would easily say that at 6 weeks, that's probably when many women are finding out they're pregnant. So you've basically, for the most part, closed the window of choice. Because even if a woman is raped, and there are many rapes committed by family members, she may not report it, which is quite common for people who have suffered that type of trauma. But she may not want a child, obviously, and by the time she finds out that she's pregnant from that rape, it's after 6 weeks. Now I know that there are exceptions for rape, but I'm making that point because if people have, there are a lot of people in this country and in the world who get raped by family members who will never go through the process now of having the police and law enforcement involved to say I was raped, to establish the criteria to get an abortion. So what will they do? Some will have the children, right? Some will have, depending on who raped them, a child that's born handicapped because of the genealogy. And some are still going to find a way to get rid of that child and hide it. So part of what this is doing is pushing people into illegal activity and life-threatening activity to themselves because they can't meet this criteria without causing other immense distress and other impacts on their lives that they may not be able to shake for the rest of their lives. And before I go further, someone spoke to me the other day and asked me my opinion on abortion. I say it again. I'm a man. I do not carry a child. I know that there are a lot of conversations we can have, but at the end of the day, the woman who carries the child, it's her body and it's her right. Even if a husband says, well, we planned a family, she says, well, I'm not having this child, I still believe it's her right. Some men won't agree with me because they're self centered narcissists. But the fact of the matter is, it's her right. It's her body. We as men, as long as for the most part, for 99.9% of the part when it comes to this issue, should shut up. This is a choice. We wouldn't like it as men if someone told us that we couldn't do something with our bodies. We would say, I'm a man, I'm going to do what I need to do. Just like you feed your families, take care of whatever, you want to have that same position. I think it's while it is a complex issue, and while yes, there are women out there who just keep getting pregnant and getting abortions, I'm not sure that represents the majority of people who go through this. There are many things that happen. And either way, whatever way you find to deal with it, it can't be telling a woman what she can and can't do with her body. It can't be putting a woman in a situation where you say rape or incest, and now a woman was raped by a parent, but that parent is the only breadwinner, and her life situation means that if she reports that breadwinner, that her life goes to hell because of her own insecurities, her challenges, and whatever her environment is. And so she has to make the choice not to say anything, but she doesn't want to have a child by her parent, so she does something either to try to abort the child herself or she takes her own life. There are consequences to these laws that men are passing over women's bodies. And so I think that I'm definitely not on board with this 6-week abortion ban because it wasn't a women's majority choice. And I think we need to be careful of this because Florida now, the entire nation later, should that choice be made. I have spoken about gun violence. I've spoken about um, anti-gun and pro-gun. Everybody knows on my show that I'm a firearm instructor. I shoot competitions. I haven't done it in a while, but I train a lot. But I believe in safety. And I believe that part of the safety is for those who are allowed to have and carry guns, they should all have a permit. They should be vetted both as in criminal background periodically in a way that's not costly to them, but in a way that's effective to make sure that they're staying on the right side of the law. And there should be mental health checks. He signed a bill, Governor DeSantis, that allowed concealed carry in Florida without a permit. Well, Florida has always been a shall carry state, and I honestly wish New York was. But I still think that if government and people have trust in each other, then there should be a way to come up with a system that's fair and honorable and honest. And I think this is the argument with pro-gun, most people, right? They don't trust government. You tell them okay, and then they come back and they take more, and that's a fact as well. But that's something we can debate. I'm just listing the things that he passed. He eliminated unanimous jury decisions for the death penalty. Wow. And it says if at least 8 jurors determine that the defendant should be sentenced to death, the jury's recommendation to the court must be a sentence of death. I don't agree with that. I think that we don't create life, that God created life. I think that myself, all of you, even the governor, can leave this planet in a blink, whether it be from something we didn't know existed in our bodies or some accident or something happens, whatever it is. That I believe that the decision to put someone to death should be unanimous by all 12 people being able to agree. We've seen it in movies, and in this day and age, movies are not so fictitious anymore, right? Because look at things like AI. All these movies that we saw years ago that were never going to be true are actually coming to fruition. We've seen in movies where one juror will hold out, and it turns out that later on that juror was right. Now, I'm not saying this happens often, but I'm saying if it happens once, that's once too often because you're talking about a life, and therefore, whatever evidence was provided, whatever caused the jury to have a unanimous decision to convict, to find guilty, they must do the same for the death penalty. So I don't agree with that there. I do agree with his bill that makes it's called capital sex battery, that makes child rapists eligible for the death penalty with the minimum sentence of life in prison without parole. I'm a parent. I got you, Robin DeSantis. I'm gonna give you kudos for that. I'm gonna agree with that, whether you like it or not. If a jury of 12 people, all 12, which I guess has to be in that case, find someone guilty of child rape, then life imprisonment or death, whatever, you don't need to be around anymore. I'm looking at my clock and I'm getting almost to 30 minutes, or it's like 25 minutes, so I don't want to take up too much of your time. He signed a bill that was a sweeping crackdown on immigration, which is designed to deter undocumented individuals from showing up in the state. I just think we need to be careful with that because if we look deep enough into all of our ancestry, most of us started out as immigrants, and we're here because of some forefather or some generations ago coming here as an immigrant. It says under the law, transporting someone who has entered the country illegally could be punished with a 5-year prison sentence or $5,000. I don't think that's going to deter anything. It also requires companies with at least 25 employees to check immigration status of workers against a federal database. Well, if you're allowing, we have asylums here, right? Asylum states, safety states. If you're allowing all these people in and then you're going to tell them they can't work, then I'm not sure where you're going with that. I'm going to get to a couple more of the serious ones before I end this off. One is restricting transgender Floridians' access to treatments and bathrooms. That's not on the slippery slope. That's a God complex. I don't know how God created all of us, but He did create all of us, and we all have different ways we are created. It is. I'm not judge or jury. The day is going to come when we all leave here and we have to answer. Whatever you believe in is what you believe in. Whoever you are is who you are. And for us who are different to make decisions in other people's lives, is you have to, that's a slippery slope. Um, I am particularly disturbed about the defunding. Where was it? Defunding the diversity, equity, and inclusion programs at state universities, saying that those programs are a distraction from the core mission. How can you defund diversity, equity, and inclusion? Listen to that. People of America who in their minds are saying, well, I may vote for this guy as president. Listen carefully. Defunding diversity. We are a melting pot in the United States of America. Our culture is diverse, even if we treat one ethnicity above all others, which you know this country's been guilty of systemically. We are a country that's diverse, ethnically diverse, diverse in every way. He wants to defund that. How do you defund equity? Defunding equity, how do you do that? I don't even know how to have that conversation with you. And that's why this will be probably several episodes, because I have to really look into deeper into what he really means by that. What's the intention of that? But to anyone's ears, even if you're someone who is caught up in your own world of supremacy, you might feel that within your own race, you want to be equal with people from your race, right? So the whole concept, I really need to get back to you and do some more digging into that. And inclusion. How do you defund inclusion programs? We were put on this world, on this earth to live together. Inclusion is important to so many people in so many ways. The ability to thrive, the ability to survive, the ability to work, the ability to, it's a mental health issue. I don't know how people find him so popular with decisions like these. Of course, he has the whole land thing with Disney. Where is it here? Voiding land agreements that would allow an appointed board to review and void previous land agreements in the state. That's just a power hungry, narcissistic move. That is something that's indicative of someone who is my way or the highway. And that's not for the people, by the people. I'm sorry. So I'm giving you a little list of, who is now Governor DeSantis and Republican candidate DeSantis for 2024. I'm going to, as we get more information on more candidates, and if some come out on, whoever comes out for the other parties, whoever decides to run independent, whatever, I will look up their information. We will have conversations about all the candidates, because this is not a time to be so distracted that we don't make decisions about your life. If you don't make decisions about your life, you will suffer the consequences. We are in a country and a world that struggles too hard already. Foreign policy, wars going on, all these things going on. We need to make decisions in our lives and use the power of the people, by the people. It was a pleasure being here again with you this week. I encourage you to please, share the podcast. Please subscribe to the channel. I'm trying to build a group of people who not necessarily like-minded, but like-minded in the sense that we're willing to discuss and make positive change that benefits all of us. And it would be great if I can continue to do so and expand the podcast and get the reach that I want to. So please share it, listen to it, and remember, as you go through the upcoming week, there are important issues that you cannot turn a blind eye to. You must pay attention to. We are responsible for ourselves, and it's time we stand up and own our responsibility. It's been a pleasure being here with you again this week. Do enjoy your week ahead. And until we speak again, take care of yourselves and each other.